Good morning, I'm Tobi Weiss. I'm a game music composer from Germany, and today I'll be taking over Expressive E's Instagram channel. And I'll take you with me for a whole workday of me. So what we'll do is I work on 2 of my 3 main game music projects, and I try to explain as much as possible about how game music works and how a regular day of a full-time composer looks like. And if you look at this schedule, it's a pretty full day. As already said, I have a lot of work to do today, and I'll take you with me through all these steps in the stories. And another thing is this stuff isn't pre-recorded. So I have access to the direct messages of the Expressive E Instagram channel, so feel free to send any, questions if you have any, or if you just want to say hi, I check the messages as often as possible. I look forward to that. I'll have a coffee now, and then, I'll begin with my workday. It's almost 9 a.m. right now in Germany, and yeah, it'll be a long day, so I'll get my coffee now. Alright, so this is the first step of the day. Before I play a single note, I always spend around about 30 to 60 minutes with communication with client and administrative work. So if you look at, for example, last week's schedule, there are always 1 or 2 big blocks of music production, like the orange things. And before that, I always do a lot of different things. And in the early years, that's even more, because 5, 6, 7 years ago, I spent at least 2 or 3 hours being active in forums, communities, reaching out to other aspiring game devs and filmmakers to find people to grow with and to work with. And it takes such a huge amount of your regular day if you're trying to build a career or actually are already a full-time composer. And I think that's something that's very often underestimated, the time you have to spend with stuff that's not actually making music. So that's what I do now, write a bunch of mails, like 10 or 15, and then I'll get to music production. So how I found my first game projects was that I simply was active at as many places as possible. I tried to showcase my passion for game music and that I'm willing to learn stuff with other people in every available forum. And what I did in addition to that is I didn't wrote bulk mails. I did that too. I tried it once, wrote thousands of emails with the same text, didn't get a single job, of course, because it's annoying. What I did instead, and what led to a lot of awesome people that I got to know, is I looked at small indie developer studios, took an artwork or something, and created something for them. I wrote a little leitmotif for the character, explained what I had in mind, and I showed something. I was like, hey, this is what I can offer you to improve your project, how I can make your passion project become a little bit more awesome. And in the worst case, the people are like, we already have somebody, but they won't be annoyed. And this got me a lot of jobs and a lot of free practice. So I'm done with the mails now, and now I prepare the actual music production session. And especially in game music, projects take a lot of time very often. So sometimes you work for years on a specific project, and with all these dynamic layers and stuff like that, the track count can easily get into the hundreds. So scheduling stuff and planning everything as good as possible is key, and I had to learn that. If you look at this file, for example, we have all the tracks with the different phases. What's their trigger, what's their condition, what's their unique instrument and stuff like that. We talk about that later. For all the locations, all the bosses, when they change, why they change and stuff like that. So I try to keep track of everything, because otherwise, especially when you plan a more advanced concept, you can lose track so easily, and it happened to me so often that in the end it was a total mess. I thought I had great ideas, but then I simply forgot what I was doing in the beginning. I started to create written concepts before I start the actual music production. And it looks like this. I write down all the themes we may have, all the instruments, all the melodic and instrumental leitmotifs. So if, for example, the acoustic guitar is connected to the mental state of the main character, and it becomes more and more distorted during the playthrough, to support this change, then I write that down. All the instruments, when I use them and why, what's the purpose of each instrument. That's so important, to give instruments and melodies a purpose. And it has 2 advantages. A, I can schedule everything and adapt it during the music production. And the even bigger advantage maybe is I can explain what I have in mind to the client. I create that sometimes before I have signed a contract. And that way I can showcase knowledge. I can showcase, hey, look, this is what I have in mind. This is a great dynamic concept. It's not only background music and stuff like that. And it helps so much to keep track of what you're actually doing. And now we start making music. So the first step today is track 3 of a cozy city builder game, Green Again, that I'm working on. It's the rare case that there's already a playable demo. Most of the time you begin working on a game soundtrack when there's only a concept, if you are lucky, artworks. And here is the current session of the track. The whole soundtrack is concepted in a way that it's composed in a parallel way, and we utilize branching. That means each track has different phases based on how much the player progressed in the game. For example, if the first watchtower is placed, then phase 2, the bass and the drum will fade in. I can showcase that really quick. It's just like only the main instrumental. First watchtower is placed, the drums are there. And the main advantage of handling it this way, you can see there are more organic instruments. If you reach a specific amount of trees, it's connected to the nature. And then even later, the main melody joins as soon as the players perceived like the final phase of the game as an additional part of motivation. And these changes, because it's composed in a parallel way, like it's one big session, can happen at any time. I handle this via group buses. So I can check in every given moment, like I can fade in and out the specific groups and see if the transition works. And it's a super efficient way to work on a track or to work on game music in general. And the main goal we want to achieve is not like the player should notice that the music is changing, but it should do something in the subconscious mind, like a subtle addition, like it's like kind of a reward layer too. After a few sessions, the player will notice subconsciously, in the best case, that if the world becomes way greener, the instrumental becomes more organic too. More wood instruments join the synthetic soundtrack and stuff like that. And that's what I have to work on right now. So what I did now is I took a preset that sounds like this. The press curve, so I have really a lot of control, so to a way that it really fits my playstyle. You can do that easily. And I also adjusted the bending plus the reverb a little bit and the release, and I added a little bit of high cut. And I also split up the chords. So in the beginning, to test the sound, I played the full chord progression, but you don't want to have all the instrument blasting all the time. So I split it up, and in the beginning it's only and in the end it goes higher up. Then it's like because the purpose of this instrument is to support the lead instruments of the track, and that's very important very often, because it's not about making all the instruments of your project sound good when they are soloed. That's not important at all, because the purpose, it's always about the purpose. If it's a support instrument to glue the track together, then it doesn't have to sound good solo. It's just like it has to sound good, or it has to make the main instruments of the track shine. It has to do its job. And so often in the beginning I was like, yeah, it's not nailed yet. It often happens when you record solo instruments like a violin or something, or a choir. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't sound good solo. But I had to learn that it's really about making this instrument shine in the whole context, in the bigger picture, in the whole track. And now I'm going to record it. By the way, while working on the track right now and adapting the synthesizer to my needs, I wanted to tell you that it's not that likely, or that it doesn't happen that often, that you go for such straightforward classic chord progressions. It always depends on the purpose of the music. In this case, it's a builder, like a cozy situation where the music kind of wants to set you in a meditative flow, you know what I mean? So, but when you write for games, very often, dozens of minutes of music are more like atmospheres, because you want to use your melodic motives at very specific moments. So when you go for a blasting melody all the time, the melodic events don't have impact anymore. It's like the thing with Silence Before the Storm. If it's silent, the louder part is more impactful. Same thing with melodies and motives, for example. So I often try to connect the big melodies to important things, like easiest example to the main character, and use it at very important moments of the game to make it shine. Actually, before I get into recording mode, I take a short break because breaks are important as fuck. When I was younger, I thought like, oh, I can only be amazing when I work 18 hours per day. And yeah, you can work a little bit more when you're younger, and it may be even necessary. But I can promise you that I never wrote a good track when I was exhausted. So I wish that I would have started way earlier to at least take some tiny breaks. And yeah, that being said, by the way, I'm in a home studio. I mean, it's an awesome space right now. This is how it looked like in 2012 when I began to study music production. It wasn't worth it for me, by the way. But today, yeah, I'm still, I don't know, when I say I take a break, then I just turn around and go into my living room where the giant Snorlax with the helmet is sitting around. And I don't know, maybe play a little bit of guitar, doing something not project related, and drink some water. Staying hydrated, stuff like that is more important than you think. So I'll be back soon. Hello, I'm back at work and I have some results. So I have the recording over here. It took me around about 15 minutes to record it in a way that I really liked it. And then I edited it a bit with volume automations. As you can see, I'm a huge fan of volume automations and automations in general. But it's just such an awesome tool. And now I implemented it in a way that it's actually able to carry the song and glue it together the way I had it in mind. So I also rearranged the main arrangement a bit, because whenever a new instrument joins the track, then often everything changes and I have to double check how does it work combined with this one in, I don't know, again based on the bigger picture I have in mind. So it takes a while to implement a new instrument. And what I show you next is a better example of how these four phases we spoke about earlier sound and how they sound separated and how I test how they can work in the game. So this track has four phases. The first one starts when you start the game and only continues until you build the first watchtower. That's after a few minutes. So it's not a phase that carries a lot of playtime. What I also need to tell you is that we have multiple tracks for each world, and the tracks are randomly taken. But whatever track is playing at the moment, it's always in phase one until one of them transitions to phase two when you build the first watchtower and the drums and the bass join. That's like, yo, you did your first bigger step, let's get some rhythm into the track, but only subtle rhythm because it shouldn't feel overwhelming at any time. It's just like relaxing in the background. Let me show you. So here's the first phase without the drums, just the beginning. Let me mute them right now. That here is a summit. And then at some point the drums join, just subdial. And then some organic instruments join. Let me make them louder. So you notice them, the strings. And then at some point the melody. Let me show you the melody part standalone with the drums one more time, just so you can figure out what it's doing. And the organic instruments. And the main phases. I take away the melody. I take away the organics. I take away the drums. That's how I often approach these tracks. I make the full track for phase 4 and then I build it back based on the concept I have in mind, like for example with the natural instruments and stuff like that. I keep polishing it now. All right, let me get back to this question real quick. So it's actually pretty important. It's one of the first things I checked out. So in my early years, I started to analyze soundtracks. I took notes of everything I encountered, like, oh, this instrument was used over here and over there. And oh, it may be connected to this, nah, it's not. And when specific melodies are used, and then I reconstructed them. That was one big part of my learning. I did that for hundreds of hours and I still do that today. But in addition to that, I also just messed around with Fmod and Weiss. I just tested things. I just tested what happens if I turn that knob. Same thing I did with synthesizers. Because back then there weren't tutorials yet, and I still think the best way to find something out is by simply trying it. And why it's so important, even if later on there will be a person who only does the audio implementation, you have to know what's possible with the middleware like Weiss and Fmod to be even more awesome in creating these concepts and creating adaptive and dynamic game music. Alright, I finished polishing the current version of the track, and now follows a series of important steps that I do every day after every session. The first thing is I added the branches to a project where I normalized them. So every track is the same volume. And then I zoom into the track and add like a millisecond of a fade out and a fade in, because this guarantees, even with wave, that you have a seamless loop. I now take these files, and we don't implement them yet, we are still polishing them before we test them in-game, and send them, in this case we're working in Discord, in the specific channel. There, every day after an update, I explain what I did and why I did what I did. That way I explain it to the dev, plus I can keep track of what I did. I also put it into my folder system. For example, track 3, they're always the newest version that I'll add here in a moment, plus all the older ones too, so I can keep track. Talking to clients as much as possible is one of the most important things, and actually, besides knowledge and the skill to utilize this knowledge, are by far the most important skills for any composer actually. Because sound quality is nothing that sells your music at the first place. As already said, it's knowledge and the skill to use it, plus the skill to communicate with clients. And in the beginning, I was so bad in explaining what I have in mind and in understanding what the clients want. So, and that's something that I'm still learning, but I can tell you that I'm so much better in explaining everything and communicating everything and setting up a super efficient and nice, fun workflow as much as possible than 10 years ago, because I kept working on it every single day. And that was, as I already said, it's so important. All right, now it's almost time to switch to the next project of the day. But before I do so, I have to, calm down my head a little bit. And so I do something else. Because I already did a break. And what's also super important is to showcase your work and your knowledge. And for example, I share a lot of work insights and share information on game music and stuff like that on my Instagram channel. And to save some time there too, because I only have limited time, when I'm working on a soundtrack, when I talk to the client, I'm allowed to share it. There are a lot of soundtracks I'm not allowed to share, and then you shouldn't do that. But that's fine. There is a lot of stuff I can share. Then I noticed like, oh, that's an interesting part, and maybe I can add an interesting caption and talk about a specific topic. Then right before recording this part, I set up the camera, shoot the camera, and then I create a video out of it and write a nice caption while I wait for something else. And that's what I did while recording the part with the summit. And I do the video now. Hello, I'm back. After the short break and after editing the video, I noticed that I'm not ready to go into 100% creative mode again. So I took a short walk. It's something I often do, just like I try to react to what my body tells me, because when I get creative, I really have to get into this 100% mode, and that's not possible if I feel like, I need another 20 minutes of break. And so, now it's time for the boss battle. This is the session. As you can see, there's a lot of MIDI going on already. And what I'm doing here is I work with a video file. That's what I sometimes do, that I capture material out of the game to allow me to just experiment a little bit in Cubase without the need to always implement it via middleware or directly in the Unreal Engine via blueprints first. So what I want to do is to add some nice lead synthesizers to this. So it has pretty much the same approach as the project we worked on earlier today. We have an intro phase that plays when you enter the room, but the boss didn't appear yet. Then a little animation plays that I can show you later. I made the sound design for that. And then it's in the beginning, it's almost only percussion in the moment. I like that because there's a lot of sound design going on anyway, but I want to add a high distortion synthesizer to that to make it a little bit more crunchy and, I don't know, to underline the mechanic type of this spider, to make it a little bit bigger. So, and then a second phase comes in where some distorted vocals join, and I just want to see where it leads me, because yeah, it's a lot of work to do. I'll show you the current state with the phases. We switch phases again as a showcase. So in the beginning, there's, as already said, there's the intro phase, and I show you when right now as a showcase the phase switches. In general, in the game, it's based on the HP bar of the boss, like it's super simple when it switches phases. Intro. That's the percussion phase when the boss fight began. And now the second phase joins. This last part was the second phase soloed. So there you notice it's the same vocals like in the beginning. We have these whispering vocals, and they become more distorted in the later phases. Also a mechanic element which fits the boss, and there comes this faster piano for some tension. So the first thing I want to add is something in the low end. And I found this bass. And it's like, it's a standing chord the whole time, the track, right? And so some sustained, growly bass notes could be nice, but maybe with a little bit more reverb. It's a very mechanic reverb too. And some pitches. Yeah, let's try that. Now I have to figure out how it can blend with the mix, right? I have to test some stuff, maybe in a higher octave even. Let's This could indeed be something for the later phases. I'll experiment a little bit and then let you know what happened. Now I go for the recording, and I put the results under this video because I have to record with my headphones to get into this recording mode. Let me check if I have the right channel here.